Hi, I'm Lawrence Block, and I've written Hit and Run, the fourth volume in the Keller series. People have asked me whatever possessed me to develop an assassin as a series character, and in point of fact, that was never my intention. Keller was born in a single short story written back in, I think, 1989, called Answers to Soldier. And and it was well received. Playboy published it in the States, and it was nominated for an Edgar Allan Poe Award. And then that was that, really. And it was about 2 years later, I think, that I was thinking about Keller. And it struck me that he was just the sort of urban, lonely guy who might find himself going into therapy. So I sat down and wrote a story called Keller's Therapy. And that went well also, but at the end of Keller's Therapy, he no longer had a therapist, but he did have a dog that was formerly the property of the therapist. And I thought, how's a hitman going to have a dog? You know, he's traveling all the time. So then I wrote a story called Dogs Walked, Plants Watered, about the dog, the person he engages to walk the dog. And by around the fourth of these stories, I realized I was in fact writing a novel on the installment plan, and was consciously doing that from that point on. All of the chapters in Hitman, the first Keller book, were originally published as short stories, but I thought of them as a novel in progress, and when it was time to edit them, there was no editing to do. They were already chapters in a book. And then in due course followed Hit List and Hit Parade, and now Hit and Run. So Keller has had much more of a run than I ever would have guessed. You know, I never set out with a goal of making Keller likable. I just tried to make him real. Um, and I suppose he was the hitman I would fancy myself as being were I he. Uh, but the interesting thing to me about Keller is how much readers like him. Um, I get a lot of email from readers, and they all confess to a sort of grudging fondness for Keller. And for some of them, this is very much a guilty pleasure. And the line is, I like him and I don't think I should. And I, not having a license as a therapist, I don't bother to work things out for them. But I find this quite interesting. There was a woman at a reading and signing in Marin County who said, you know, I think what you're doing is very psychically subversive. She said, I was reading Hit List, and I was alone in a room, and I was reading it, and at one point I looked up off into the middle distance, and I said out loud, well, so he kills people. What's so bad about that? You know, and I certainly didn't undertake to undermine the morality of a generation of readers, but it's just somehow worked out that way. It's curious. Keller's stamp collecting was something that he engaged in boyhood, and his stamp collection had disappeared back in the dimly recalled past. But at the end of Hitman, he's planning to retire. And it occurred to him that he would need something to fill his days. He felt he had enough money to retire on because he doesn't live expensively. But what would he do? And the idea of re-embracing stamp collecting came to him. And he threw himself into it and enjoyed it enormously. It's an extremely gratifying hobby, one can understand that. The king of hobbies and the hobby of kings, as it's called. as Keller will tell you. But it had the fortunate or unfortunate effect of filling his hours, but also depleting his retirement funds. So he continues to work. And stamp collecting is either an expensive hobby or not, depending. It's very much, I guess, like a cocaine habit in that it simply takes whatever money is available for it. If you have a little, it takes that. If you have a lot, it'll take that if you allow it to. In the fourth book, Hit and Run, is a departure in a sense from the series in that the others have all, to one extent or another,